Pyro is a class with a lot of variety in their weapon choices, and it's the main reason they're my most played class. I mean, depending on your loadout, you can be a powerful combo class, a sexy support Pyro, or a homunculus fresh from the egg with a brain the size of a walnut and an insatiable thirst for blood, among other loadouts. Now, with a toolkit as big as Pyro's, some items are bound to get pushed to the wayside, some rightfully so. Looking at you, Gas Pastor. But among the lesser used Pyro items, one always surprised me, that being the Thermal Thruster. I feel like a big reason the Thermal Thruster never sees any serious use is because of the noob trap stigma tied to it. You already know the guy. Gibbous on their head and a dream in their heart to complete the Thermal Thruster contract. With high hopes, they charge into the entire enemy team, only to get stomped out and tragically die young. Now this is the part where I tell you to not even bother with it and to just use the Scorch Shot. You call it punching down, but I call it an easy paycheck. But what if I told you, that's not what I'm gonna do? See, there's a lot more to the Thermal Thruster than the jump in and pray to Xeno strategy that you see a lot in pubs. With a little legwork, the Thermal Thruster can be a surprisingly great item that completely changes how you approach playing Pyro. And I know it's gonna hurt to hear for you Pyro players, but you're gonna need to use that little noggin of yours. So bust out the crossword puzzle and bring that IQ up at least 5 points, because today I'm gonna be telling you how to use the Thermal Thruster. Let's jump into it! To start off, the Thermal Thruster's best trait is the huge boost in mobility for a class that normally lacks it. Sure, you have the Detonator, but its jump is a fraction of the Thruster's and it also takes a good chunk of your health for every jump. The Thermal Thruster won't leave a scratch on your pretty head, allowing you to jump around areas quickly with little risk. The Thruster's jump also lets you take unpredictable paths and jumps you couldn't even do with a good Detonator jump, letting you ambush enemies from new, exciting, wacky angles. I mean, take a look at this clip. No one sees me fly in from this angle and I'm able to jump in and take out their med before anyone even realized what happened. In my video on the Winger, I mentioned what I like to call gamer spots. Spots on the map so obscure and unpredictable, no one will suspect you. Until you make a video showing them off to thousands of people. These new exciting angles and flank routes are just something you can't do without the Thermal Thruster. The Detonator just isn't capable of these large jumps. And the Thruster's jump has a lot more use to it than just reaching new areas. In Overwatch... Oh god. I just said the O word. They're coming.
This guy's just another moose elk. I'm gonna ring the bell.
Welp, the damage is already done. 3 children just unsubscribed from my channel. Gone but not forgotten. Anyways, in Overwatch, there's a concept known as dive characters. These characters basically excel at getting in for a pick and getting out for an escape. Take Genji for example. Every time you get a kill with him, his dash ability resets, letting you escape or keep the pressure going. The Thermal Thruster essentially turns Pyro into a dive character. If you play your cards right, you can jump right in and out of fights with ease, picking off targets and occasionally burning entire groups into snortable ashes. When playing with the Thermal Thruster, it always helps to keep the 3 E's in mind. Enter, escape, and eat ass. You always want to make sure to secure an exit before picking a fight, so you can live on and keep the pressure going. You can always do this by running towards an exit like my father going out for a gallon of milk, or jetpack out for an aerial escape. But be seriously careful not to blow through your charges too quickly. You only get 2 of the suckers before being stuck on land like a nerd. To avoid this, always make sure you stagger your charges. Each charge takes about 15 seconds to recharge, or 30 seconds for both. So unless you really need to get somewhere, I suggest waiting 7 to 10 seconds in between charges. On top of this, always aim high when you jump. because of the thermal thruster's unskippable 0.8 second holster speed. By aiming high, you can completely negate the holster by the time you reach the ground, letting you spray and pray right off the bat. The way the thermal thruster works also gives you some opportunities for mind games. Clicking the mouse will send you in the air for a small leap before launching you in the direction you're facing. You can use the first leap to bait an opponent into thinking you're going one way and double back in the opposite direction. This unique leap method also has some other abilities, like setting up jumps around sharp corners. The second leap also extinguishes teammates for some reason. Oh, hey Pyro, I got set on fire. Can you extinguish me real quick? Oh yeah, sure thing, man. I got just the thing. Sorry. Give me a second. One of the larger downsides to using the thermal thruster is the lack of a damaging secondary. Without a shotgun or flare guns, you really have to rely entirely on your primary and melee to do the job. But despite this, I think learning to play around it and using the mobility to counteract the lack of secondary is part of the learning curve of the thruster. However, I will be the first to admit there's times you really begin to miss the shotgun when playing Jetpack Pyro. You know, I've seen a lot of people slam on the thruster because they think using it is too simple. All you gotta do is click the button and you fly, unlike rocket jumping, which has a lot more tech and precision to it. But I'm pretty sure this was intentional, because instead of focusing all your attention on maneuverability, the thermal thruster lets you divert your focus on something else. Name a more American weapon than the foot. AR-15, you say? Well, more like AR fitting my boot up your ass. Stomping has been a staple of good old American ultra-violence ever since we stopped taking orders from British people. But of the two classes capable of foot-to-head combat, only one of them has truly mastered the art. And to demonstrate why the thermal thruster's stomp is so good, we need to look at why the man-treads fail. Stomping in TF2 is balanced out by two main factors, risk and reward. If there's too much risk for little reward, it's basically like unboxing. Trying to stomp an enemy with the man-treads is way too much risk for not enough reward. The first step to stomping with the man-treads is to perform a nice rocket jump. Already at this point, you've taken on average 40 damage to rocket jump towards an enemy, provided you're just using the stock rocket launcher. Landing on an enemy with the man-treads has the bonus of negating any fall damage you would have otherwise taken. There's no better feeling than having a mangled corpse break your fall. However, if you don't land on the enemy, you'll take full fall damage along with the damage you took from rocket jumping. And what do you even do when you land on an enemy? Shoot a rocket dealing massive damage to yourself and the enemy but likely killing yourself in the process, or whip out a melee weapon and start smacking? Between all the damage it takes to set up a good stomp and the harsh penalties if you fail, the Tims are really only good as a gimmick with the rocket jumper. It's time to face the facts that smashing your enemies with your god-blessed American feet is just impractical. The thermal thruster, on the other hand, is great at smashing your foes into unrecognizable red pulp. The risk of rocket jumping and blowing yourself up like an idiot is completely thrown out the window, because unlike most items that enhance mobility, there is no health penalty to using the thermal thruster. You can keep that crisp 175 health nice and topped off with every jump. And fall damage is a thing of the past too, because unlike the Yeezys, the thermal thruster provides a massive fall damage reduction after jumping. Due to the lack of risk when jumping with the thruster, you really don't have a reason to not stomp on an enemy when ambushing them from behind. Worst case scenario, you land close enough to them to kill them with your flamethrower. Best case scenario, you could deal roughly anywhere from 40 to over 100 damage and totally obliterate them in the blink of an eye. This works best with enemies who are unaware of your presence, an easy task considering the flanking capabilities of the thruster and the fact that people just do not look up in pubs. I like to call this the flank and spank. First you flank, then you spank, and it works like a charm. Just make sure not to fall back into the bad habit of trying to kamikaze your enemy, because more often than not, it will lead to you both dying. And who says the stomping fun has to end with the thruster? That's right, I'm gonna do the unthinkable and tell you about an exploit. And let me tell you, if the CIA finds out about this one, I'm getting sent to Guantanamo Bay, so try to keep this one under wraps, okay? If you disable auto respawn and choose Pyro with the jetpack equipped, you can then choose a secondary of your choice in the loadout menu. So basically just the detonator. And jetpack into the resupply cabinet. This will do a couple things. It makes it so the fall damage reduction applies on all weapons permanently, and allows you to stomp on your enemies with any weapon out. Permanently. However, as much as it makes for a flashy pyro clip, I really don't recommend doing this outside of doing a little trolling. The bonus resets every time you die, meaning you have to go through the same process over and over and over again, and the direct hit and reserve shooter will mini-crit you at all times. This exploit is basically Soldier Jumpscare Simulator. I just jumped into the entirety of Scotland. Back to using the thruster. Let's say you don't land a stomp when ambushing somebody. The impact you make on the ground sends enemies around you into the air away from you. Many naysayers of the thermal thruster will claim that this kills the weapon as it pushes enemies out of your range. Therefore, the thermal thruster is poopy and you shouldn't use it. However, getting used to this is part of the learning curve for the thruster. The impact is actually reactable and consistent. You can get used to the patterns and know where your enemy is heading. And the fact that it sends enemies into the air can distract them and briefly stun them, making them easy pickings. And that's not all the impact is capable of. I believe I've invented my very own tech with the thermal thruster. I've looked all over the internet and I think I'm the only person who's ever used this trick. And I call it the Super Boop. Patent pending. Air blasting and knockback is affected by the momentum of a target. The faster a target is moving, the more air blast and melee knockback can affect them. So what if I were to tell you that the impact of the thermal thruster creates and builds up momentum, allowing you to do this? Super Boop. See an Uber-charged medic? Super Boop. See some people contesting the objective? Super Boop. See an enemy by a cliff? You can seriously launch enemies using this tech. It especially helps when using the Dragon's Fury due to the air blast speed penalty. Not to mention a good Super Boop can lead into a pretty neat combo. And speaking of combos, the thermal thruster can actually be a great combo tool that synergizes well with a lot of Pyro's toolkit. With one of the biggest item pools in the game, there's a lot you can pair with the thermal thruster. As far as primaries go, they all have their uses, but one does fall a teensy-weensy little short. Normally the degreaser is a mainstay in Pyro's kit, but with one less combo tool at their disposal, it really only works with the extinguisher. It should also be noted that while using the degreaser does speed up the deploy animation, the holster animation is still the same amount of time. However, the degreaser is still great at doing one thing: flashy shit. The rest of Pyro's primaries all pair nicely with the thruster. You have the backburner if you want the spank part of the flank and spank to spank even harder, the stock for all-around consistency, the Dragon's Fury for its high burst damage, and the flog for occasional bursts of extreme power. And if you're feeling extra un-Christ-like, here's a neat little trick you can do with the flog. And boy, when you pull it off in-game does it feel satisfying. As far as melee weapons go, I like to stick with the power jack, extinguisher, and especially the back scratcher. The power jack is good for going all in on mobility, ensuring you move quickly on the ground and in the air. The extinguisher is all for you sketch-check wannabes. Oh wait, never mind. The back scratcher is just mwah. You can hang around the enemy's backline for much longer due to the increased health from health packs, and the increased damage makes it a great combo with a good stomping. And a little tip for you pretty medic girls out there. The healing penalty only applies to the medigun, so if you see a back scratcher pyro, make sure to shoot them with the crossbow every chance you get. I wouldn't recommend other melee weapons due to it being too situational with the thruster or that they're the hot hand. But just because I don't recommend using the hot hand, tragic I know, doesn't mean you can't do some sick combos. In this clip I fly in, surf off of sentry damage, and reflect a rocket for a double kill. In this clip I reflect jump off of a rocket, jump with the thermal thruster, and stomp this guy's head into a fine paste. Oh, in this one, I totally market guard a medic with the Neon Annihilator. I'm not even using the thermal thruster in this one, but I thought it was cool. What are you gonna do about it, punk? So you can fly anywhere you want, deal immense damage quickly, and escape in the blink of an eye. By Jove, is there anything that can stop you? Is there any reason to not use the thermal thruster? Sentry guns. Especially mini sentries. You troll germains already know my pain. Pyro isn't great at dealing with sentries as is, but man, you will find yourself jumping into a lot of sentry guns you didn't know existed until it's way too late. The thermal thruster also isn't great on enclosed maps since you can't get enough height for a good stomp or flank. So sorry to all you junction enjoyers, but I don't think this is the map for you guys. Also, I don't know if this is just me or not, but sometimes the thermal thruster just doesn't even freaking work. Like, I press the button and it makes the sound, but I don't go anywhere. Like, in this clip, it happens 3 times in a row. I don't even know what causes this. But like I've said, the thermal thruster is great despite its flaws. Just because it has downsides to balance itself out doesn't mean it's not usable. You can fly high and hit hard, and it really works with my type of playstyle. I really hope you dust off that thermal thruster you haven't used since you completed the contract, and give it one last try for old time's sake. Who knows, you may find yourself using it more than you expected, like me. Until next time, gamers.